IVM.
Welcome to another week on IVM. It's been a great week. If you aren't following us on social media, please make sure that you are. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. On Cyrus Says this week, Cyrus is joined by actor and comedian Gaurav Gera. They talk about Gaurav's journey in showbiz and the inspiration behind his Shopkeeper Behenji sketches. On Simblified, Naren and Srikeit are joined by guests Avanti and Zain from the Marvel's Lost and Found podcast. On Geek Fruit, Tejas and Jishnu give their take on Ant-Man and the Wasp and discuss the future of the Ant-Man verse. I'm really looking forward to that. That was a great movie. On Varta Lab, last week, founder of IVM himself, Amit Doshi. Hey, that's me. Talked to Akash and Naveen about being Amit Shah's doppelganger, my journey so far, and how he started on IVM podcast. I'm sorry if that grammar was twisted. On Keeping It Queer this week, we have the producers of Vice's latest web series, Sex Rated. And with that, let me take you on to your shows.
Hello and welcome to Simblified. You guys must be expecting a shorty this week, but we have, and we were planning to give you one, but we got some pretty amazing guests to come on our show. Zain Calcuttawala and Avanti Malhotra, who are hosts of the brand new IVM podcast, Marvel's Lost and Found. Avanti is mental health professional and Zain is her co-host, and we'll be talking about mental health, depression, the causes, the symptoms, the taboos around it, and everything that make mental health such an important issue in today's day and age. So stick around and see you on the other side of this break.
Long, long ago, not in Bethlehem, but in a place nearby, there was a wonderful birth of a huge show, which I like to call Cyrus Says. A show that encapsulates everything in human history, from the first Homo sapien to the last Homo sapien. Who's traversed the entire world and then come back to India. This is a show which tells you everything about everything. If you want to know, avoid Google, come to us. It's called Cyrus Says. Get new episodes every Monday and Thursday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts from. It's simple as A, B, oh God, what comes after that?
So welcome to yet another episode of Simplified, the smartest podcast to come out of Malad West. And today
East also,
we
okay.
have, and Malad East, Malad we should call it.
Yeah.
So today, unfortunately, and I can almost hear the screams of anguish.
And joy.
And joy. Chuck is not here.
Missing
He's caught
in
up at
action.
work. Yeah.
Or so
but
he says.
We have basically increased the average IQ tremendously by inviting two fascinating people, Zain Calcuttawala and Avanti Malhotra, who host the Marvel's Lost and Found podcast on IVM. And it's a podcast that you must listen to. It's fantastic and it talks about something which is very, very important for practically all of us. That is mental health. And over to our guests. So, Zain, tell us something, both of you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And so tell us something about yourselves and what made you do all these things. But we'll sort of structure this. We'll go very professionally.
As in, like, do you want us to give you a little bit of an
Can you just start off with telling us a bit about yourselves first?
Okay. Shall I go ahead first? Okay. So, I'm Zain.
Yay.
And I'm addicted to, no, I'm kidding. So I was...
Getting straight into the good stuff.
So I wasn't raised in India. I lived in Africa for the first 10 years of my life. Then went to boarding school in South India. Moved to Bombay in 2006. I'm a music producer now, but I started playing the drums when I was 10. And it's just kind of continued ever since. And when I moved to Bombay and after I finished college over here, my first job was with the Blue Frog and then with OML as an artist manager. Mm-hmm. And then I put the management aside for a bit, went and studied music production in the UK, came back in 2014, and the rest is history, really. Mm-hmm. Freelance music producer, sound engineer. That's me.
Fantastic.
And mental health podcast.
And mental health podcast host, yes, along with you as well.
And Avanti, a bit about yourself.
bit about myself. It's hard to edit. 29 years. But
that's where Abbas comes into play here.
Yeah. But I'm a mental health counselor by profession, and I live in Pune, and that's where I practice. I have specific love for golden retrievers only. And that's me. Edited. Very edited. I thought I'd keep it snappy.
Why so discriminatory?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just easier that way sometimes.
I feel like I gave in way more than I should have.
So let's start with the little stuff that you have divulged to us about you being a mental health counselor, is what you said. So personally, I'm a psychology student as well, myself, though I'm always very ashamed to admit that, because I know, despite having studied it for 3 years, I know the phrases, I know the people, I know the right stuff, but there's some fundamental questions that were not answered, or that remain unanswered, or at least remain hazy in some way, where what does a mental health professional, counselor, therapist, psychologist, in some cases what people call psychics as well, which I know.
Can you read my mind?
Yeah.
Are you reading it right now?
I'm like, that's one thing I know, there are no mental health ones, or if they are like amazing. So yeah, but can you just define these different terms for us and tell us maybe what the difference is?
Yeah. So I think the main difference really is between a psychiatrist and a therapist/psychologist/counselor. A psychiatrist is somebody with a medical degree who can prescribe medication, and they are trained specifically to deal with the mind, so issues of the mind, and they prescribe, antidepressants, anti-anxiety pills. You would go to a psychiatrist and get medication for that. I often have clients coming to me and being like, really disappointed that I don't prescribe pills. I can't. I'm not allowed to. That's not part of my professional degree. And I have a master's in mental health counseling. So when in India, people call themselves a psychologist when they have a master's in clinical psychology or counseling psychology. It just so happens that my master's I did in the US, and it was in mental health counseling. So I don't like to call myself a psychologist, although a lot of people, would and do call themselves psychologists in India after getting a non-psychology, air quotes, degree. So that's the difference. The work that we do is in psychology, as a psychologist and as a therapist/counselor. Therapy and counseling is, synonymous. Is to work through issues verbally, or using creative methods like the arts, music, dance, movement. That's how we do it. We don't prescribe. We will maybe work with a psychiatrist and say, maybe you can take pills and come to us for therapy, because that is the best way to get better.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah, so that's the most proven.
So it's rarely just the medication in isolation, just not just the medication.
But then again, so the one related question that comes up is that when you meet people who come to you for help, but then are you able to determine whether they need clinical help, like they need pills and stuff like that, and are you then able to refer them to, say, maybe a psychiatrist who will be able to help them with this stuff?
Yeah. When, say, I've had clients who've come in with depression or anxiety. And now, it's really, you can't just say that, this person's coming with depression and you have to treat the depression, meaning the symptoms of depression. You have to figure out what's going on here that is driving this person to feel depressed or to feel anxious. So you work with that, with the case history as well. But if, I find that my client is not getting out of bed, is not going to work, is not eating meals, is not sleeping, is thinking about suicide all the time, is not functioning, they're not functioning in their lives, I will say, I think it's time that you meet a psychiatrist and you consider getting on some medication, because they will bring you up to speed, just to sort out, to make you sleep better, to make you just feel a little more able. That's when I do the referral. Yeah.
All right.
I do.
Great. So, getting to the topic that a lot of people are talking about right now, where it's actually, there's this people keep saying this stuff that, okay, you've had a bad day at work. People are like, oh, damn, I'm depressed. And then, okay, I'm not depressed anymore the next day. And it's a word that's thrown around very comfortably. It's also a word that's not used enough sometimes, where people are like, I'm just down. I'm just feeling down, and I've been down for a while. And maybe they're depressed and they're afraid to say the word. So where is it that you can define when someone is depressed, and when is it that, what are the signs that someone needs to go get help?
Okay, so I mean, we can go through the symptom list, but I feel that Zain I feel like Zain likes to talk about this a little bit. So what do you think?
Okay, well, I think I can talk about this one, of course, from personal experience. It's kind of the whole reason why our podcast began in the first place. You know, the thing is, unfortunately, though, I have to say that I only sought out help much, much later until I realized what was going on. So the thing is that I don't think there's anything, I as a sort of preface to what I'm about to say, I don't think there's anything wrong with seeing a counselor every once in a way, just like, when someone's not feeling too great, weary or whatever, they go to the GP to see what's up.
Yeah.
I at least the way I see it now, I see it that way. If things get more severe, then you do delve into a little bit more detail with the counselor that you're seeing. That's my preface for this. So now going into when. So I first started feeling symptoms of depression when I was about 17.
And what were those symptoms?
So the most obvious one to me was literally feeling like I couldn't get out of bed. It was, and it actually, like when I woke up in the morning, I actually felt this weight on my chest. What would normally take me a second to do, get out of bed, took me at least 45 minutes.
And it lasted for a while. It wasn't just 3 days or 4 days.
And the reason it came about was because, I was one of the few people in my class who took a year off after high school. So I completed my 12th. And at that time, being free of any sort of responsibility in life, you're thinking, oh, wow, a year off is going to be a lot of fun and all of that. And now, remember I said that I moved to Bombay in 2006. So I had no real grounding here per se.
Right.
All the friends of mine who moved back to Bombay with me were only here for a couple of months. And and I say a couple of months because most of them went off to college, be it to the UK or to the US, or some of them just simply stayed back here and began their lives here. Fair play. I did not.
Right.
So the thing is that there very soon came a point, maybe 2.5 months tops, where I was just bored senseless. And my routine very quickly just became get out of bed, sit on my computer the entire day, waste the day, and go back to bed. And my parents also at the time, understandably so, were like, all right, Zain, so what are you up to? You can't just spend the whole year doing nothing. And, I agreed. But at the time, I did not have an answer. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not doing anything.
And you felt pretty worthless.
Yes. And that's when it started to happen. And then it started to spiral. Like, I should be doing something, but I'm doing nothing. I don't feel like I have any purpose here. And it started to spiral and spiral and spiral and spiral. And that's when it first happened. But I just kind of shook it off as stress, but then and then fine, I got stuff to do, and then that sort of, the weight of that lifted a little bit. But then over the years, in hindsight, I realized that there were things that I would feel that I just kind of thought, maybe this is just how adults are supposed to feel. I don't know. Like at any given point of time in my life, including even right now, there's always a sense of a clenching feeling in my diaphragm or my solar plexus, whatever you want to call it. The magnitude of it just varies. If I'm feeling particularly uncomfortable, it's really, really heavy and really, really, really clenched. If I'm not, then it's just more at ease, but it's always there. At least 9.9 times out of 10, it's always there. Flash forward 10 years later to the crux now of your question, when I actually realized I needed help, was actually after talking to a very, very close friend of mine a couple of years ago, who has, in fact, herself been going through depression and depression since she was a teenager. And a lot of the things she talked to me about, I went, oh my God, this is what I've been dealing with, or at least some of it is what I've been dealing with immensely for 8-9 years.
Right.
10 years maybe. And when I hit a particular low point one day, I just said, you know what, now I need to do something. That's the long answer
Mm-hmm.
to your question.
Sorry, can I jump in for a second? I was going to say that Zain has been able to share this detailed, sort of introspected narrative of his depression and his life because he's had the privilege of figuring it out and putting the pieces together. And I think that's what, that's what we need to do, right?
Yeah.
Like figure it out. Like why? What's going on here? And it's not clear. The answers are not clear. I'm depressed because I failed an exam.
Correct.
It's depressed because I can't deal with what failure means to me and I feel all inadequate and helpless and hopeless and worthless. And
There are times when I have pretty much the similar feelings of hopelessness and like I don't know what was the meaning of all this and why we are here, and it's been with me on and off for a long time. And it goes away. It'll be there for a couple of days and then it'll go away and then it'll come back and it'll go away. And there is absolutely no trigger for it.
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's everything will be going fine. And so I'm perennially wondering if I should go and see a psychiatrist. But now I think maybe it would be better to go and see a psychologist first, right?
yeah, and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a function of also working in, high stress environments, where type A personalities, very, very driven personalities, who people are like, everything's about the achievement, everything's about either it's in binaries, it's in success or failure kind of scenarios.
And you know what, frankly, Bombay is not a city that gives anyone peace of mind.
Oh, yeah.
Man. Bombay is on a 10, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's on an 11 all the freaking time.
Yeah, it's practically like sitting in, constantly living inside a room where it's like a dance floor that you're living in, where the music is turned on 10 and you're like,
there's nothing.
And no one really wants to listen to anything. Including probably a therapist. So which reminds me of the joke I was telling you about. So this guy is saying that today after 12 years of therapy, my therapist said something which brought tears to my eyes. I said, what was it? No hablo English.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
So we'll take a little break now and we'll find out if our therapist speaks English or not. After the break, stay tuned.
Shunyavan, 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 Shunyavan.
$1 billion acquisition. Another copycat startup got formed.
No, the tech world in India is surely moving double the speed of this voiceover.
Tune in to Shunya One every Tuesday to catch us talking to the smartest people we know on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from.
And welcome back to Simblified. We have Zain Calcuttawala and Avanti Malhotra with us today from the podcast Marbles Lost and Found. And we are talking about mental health and all the issues around it, all the perceptions and taboos and everything about it that people perceive today.
How much time you got?
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
And we're going to wrap all of that up in the second half. So let's jump right in.
All right.
And one thing that is predominant, what prevents people from... I was just reading, I think Rohan Joshi on his Insta stories had posted something very simple about... what you said earlier. It's about saying you're not feeling well, you're feeling like you've got a sore throat or a sore back, or you're just not feeling up to it, or you're feeling feverish. You get up, you go to the doctor. That's as mundane and as routine as it gets. But when you're not feeling fine and your mental health doesn't feel fine, or you're not feeling at the top of your game, getting up and going to a psychologist becomes a bigger deal. Even in families, from what I understand, on an average Indian family perspective, going to any kind of person who has a prefix psych to it means pagal hai. So pagal ho gaya hai, dimag kharab ho gaya hai, usko udhar wo psychic ke paas jana pada. So I kid you not, the number
Yeah,
of times
yeah,
I've
yeah.
heard psychic.
I know.
like, it's someone else's conversation as well. Usko pata hai wo psychic ke paas gaya. And you're like, "Nahi, please, you say bitch, but don't say psychic." Yeah, but then anyway, so yeah, I mean, that's the biggest taboo. Coupled with almost like, I think just recently there was this incredible, from the Indian government, I think Health and Family Welfare, there's like ways to cure depression.
Oh yeah, right.
There's this
Do
image.
yoga.
Do yoga.
Eat fruits.
Eat fruits.
Get 8 hours of sleep. Dude, if you're getting 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep every
don't have
night,
a
you would not be
I don't know
depressed.
anyone in Bombay
okay, that's
who
not-
has the privilege of 8 hours
Oh
of
man,
sleep.
seriously. I mean, and the thing is, once you get past the ridiculousness of the suggestions that, like, have positive thoughts. Really? If I was depressed, I would pay money to get positive thoughts.
One thing I will say about that list, though, and though I strongly agree with everyone's viewpoint here, the thing is that at least I can say that some of the things that they did mention are useful for people who are
Understood.
Battling, but I think just that that map alone of it just sort of trivializes the illness in itself.
I think the map, what it did was, I think the problem was not in the suggestions that they gave, but in the intent of the post.
Yeah.
It kind of said that if you maintain a set of good habits, depression will go away.
Yeah.
So to speak, good habits, depression would go away. I mean,
Yeah.
I think rather than addressing which is where I think the problem was that, I mean, where it becomes dangerous is that if you say that, okay, fine, you're getting depressed, and if someone is actually depressed and says, fine, I will follow this, government has told me to do this, and I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, and you still feel miserable, the person's like, what the hell do I do now?
Exactly. And they're also sending the wrong message out to people who don't get it, because then you know, suicide is, for some, it feels like the suicide rate in our country is going, I don't know if that's true or not, but if someone, you know, God forbid, does commit suicide, and this is the sort of rhetoric that our government is giving people, they're just turning around and saying, if only they had eaten more fruits and done more yoga. And I mean, we laugh at it because it's ridiculous, but I mean, that's the sort of message you're sending people. You're not really getting into the nitty-gritty of
why are you not doing the yoga?
Yeah.
I think that's our job, right? To be like, and actually the government is right, to be honest, that these set of habits will probably, you know, put aside depression. It will delay it. Like, if you take care of yourself in certain ways, and you are a perfect human being and don't have to deal with any shit from the past or whatever, you're not going to get depressed, right? Fact is, when you're depressed, you're not able to do those things. You don't have that willpower. I hate that word.
You want to stay healthy, just stop getting a fever. Don't get a fever.
Exactly.
How do you not get a fever?
Exactly that,
How do you do that? So one of the other thing is this, that like these things, like afflictions of the mind, are pretty independent of your, you know, social circumstances. So they would be pretty much constant across different strata of populations. So rich people, poor people will all have more or less the same level of... So it's not like a rich man's disease. It's not like well-off people have depression. So it is, you know, it is heartbreaking to think of a huge population of people who need therapy, who need mental health, who have no access to it at all. So
I have no conception of the fact that they can get help. I mean, that also exists. But again, I mean, considering you, Avanti, are you deal with these cases every day. So what are the primary taboos that you are confronted with, and what do you tell people, and what kind of messages are put out there to kind of fight these taboos?
Confidentiality, huge one, all across the world, not just in India.
Which is kind of difficult because India has no conception of privacy inherently almost.
Exactly, which is why they're like concerned about even will my therapist tell my mom what's going on?
And there's nothing that person can do. So in the West, you probably, you know, you can be sued. India, you can't do all that.
Pride. I think a feeling of just like, I should be able to handle this by myself, which Zain, you went through. I know, like,
for 10 years.
Like I really should deal with this on my own. Access. That's another one. Where the hell do you find a therapist within your price range, within your location range, what? Like, it's not easy. It's not easy, and it's a privilege, man.
And
So we
sometimes,
charge a lot, actually.
Who speaks your language? So,
Yes.
Yeah.
Access, exactly.
So,
So those are the biggest ones, actually. And I think we're moving past, slowly, very slowly, we're moving past the whole, no, he's mad or she's mad and you can't kind of thing.
Right.
Because I feel that we're moving past that. The more and more people are reaching out to the center that I work at, for example. And they come from a lot of socioeconomic backgrounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And when it's funny because when a client is referred by their GP, they take it so seriously.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think, that also must be a big thing, right? When actually the real doctors refer the people.
Yeah, quote unquote.
Yeah, the real doctors will refer you, and then then it might be worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, fair enough. And also then there is also, there are a whole host of, there is of course depression. There are a whole host of other ailments that you can go through. Like there is, starting off from, of course, depression, there's bipolar disorder, there's schizophrenia. Now, there are also a whole bunch of people who, there's also like, there's degrees of it, there's also variations of it, there's different manifestations of it. How do you kind of get around to, firstly, identifying them is one thing, but getting people convinced enough to come through the door to come and take that treatment. How does that go about? How do you go about that?
People come to me. They're self-referred, or a GP refers them, or a psychiatrist refers them, or family member brings them because they've noticed that they're acting erratically. So I don't do the convincing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
No, so maybe what I want to ask then therefore is that so the more interesting question would be, how would you kind of communicate? Because family is really important. Family and friends are really important in the support structure of recovery in some way. Especially in the cases of orthodox families and even non-orthodox. Just lack of understanding between this thing. Is there any kind of education that needs to be done for family members, and how do you go about doing that?
Yeah. Zain, do you want to... Yeah.
The thing is that it's the question that you're asking is a very big question. And I don't think it's a question that neither I nor Avanti have the answer to.
Yeah.
Which is in fact why we're doing our podcast in the first place, So as you said, it really boils down to the exposure to it. It's very difficult to help anyone who doesn't want to help themselves. And the thing is that to have someone be willing and able to admit that, there might be something else here, that like a mental ailment, therefore I need to seek a mental health professional for this. To get to that point, it really boils down to education. How you do it? Well, a podcast, perhaps. I guess. I hope that's one step. But
sorry, I was just going to jump in. But I think, was your question how do you educate your support system?
Yes, support
when
systems.
you're depressed.
More about support systems.
So educating the support system, well, that in itself also takes a lot of effort. And that, at least, so I can only speak from my context. It took me a bit of willpower, first of all, to tell my parents that I was seeing a psychotherapist.
Yeah.
And I remember that conversation where both of them were like, they were both taken aback quite a bit. But the more I went, they said, look, as long as you feel like it's helping you, that's all that matters. And I was like, okay, good. And the things that I started to speak more and more to my friends about it as well, I consider myself lucky because the people in my circles that I was speaking to about this sort of thing, quite a few of them turned around and said, it's funny you mentioned this because this is what I've been dealing with as well. And then you realize, for me, that was reaffirmation of that, of the idea that I actually wasn't alone in this. So all of these things started to come together, and that's when I realized that I wanted to do the podcast. And it was the starting of the podcast that began to get my parents really on board. There have been very difficult conversations with them in the past about this sort of thing. Heated conversations, if you want to call them conversations. But the more and to the point where I wasn't too sure if I should be doing this, but the more I went forward anyway, the more they read, the more they chose to understand. They had a choice. They could have just said, you know what, our son is over-exaggerating, he doesn't know what's going on, he's very naive, this, that. But they just chose to try and see things from my perspective as well. The very fact that they or anyone just allows another perspective apart from their own is like the first step. That I wish if everyone did that, there probably wouldn't be wars, man. Like, forget about mental health. You know?
Yeah, so there's no easy way
there's
to
no easy
convert
way.
the denial into
There's no easy or there's no one way.
But there are easy ways to try and begin that conversation, that dialogue. And the way I do it is I will send a printout, like a really simple, like what is depression and what are the symptoms, and send it with my client and say, show this to your family members, or show this to your boyfriend, or show this to your partner, and tell them that this is something that I'm working on with my therapist or whatever like that. And then if they are willing, and if their family members are willing to come in for a session, I call them in. So then we have like a joint session.
So you have a session for them
great.
too.
Yeah.
I think
then
that's very important.
You
That's
have
very
to bring
important,
them into the... This person can't... Anyway, they're isolated. You're so isolated when you're depressed. You need to bring in as much as you can. Of course, that depends on if the client even wants to bring in family or whoever. Yeah.
No, and so the other part also begs the question, say I have a loved one, and how do I identify if they are depressed or if they are not up to the mark, and whether I should recommend that they go see someone?
Well, first of all, you're obviously noticing something's up. Because
because I don't know what those things are often.
But something's off.
Yeah.
They're not acting, they're not themselves. They haven't been themselves for a while. And you don't know what that themselves, you know what themselves is, but you don't know what's happening right now. So in psychology therapy, we have the Bible, which is called the DSM. DSM-5 is on. Yeah. And so there's a list
What's it called again?
Diagnostic Statistical Manual.
Yeah.
Which basically just has all the currently known mental ailments out there with details about each of them. And it's constantly evolving. And things are coming in, things are being removed. Homosexuality up until the 60s.
That was the moment of for the DSM was when homosexuality was removed from the DSM.
Which was in the 50s or the 60s.
It was part of the DSM.
As a mental disorder.
As a mental disorder.
I think it was the 50s, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so that's when. So in fact, psychology was the removal from the DSM was the breakthrough moment for when in the mainstream, at least in the scientific community, because scientific community is very, very. They are always objective. The removal of the bias from there was the beginning of where social movements began for mass acceptance of homosexuality. But yes, please, sorry, that's a diversion. But you were saying about the DSM.
No, I was just saying, so that lists a bunch of criteria. So like you have to meet a certain amount of criteria, first of all, to meet the diagnosis of depression, diagnosis of clinical depression, for a certain amount of time. It can't just be, I've been feeling like shit for 3 days. I'm depressed. So you have to do that. So you would have to, I think what we all do now is we go online and we're like, am I depressed? And then you look up criteria, symptoms.
And the answer is always
listen. That's like going on to WebMD with a cold and finding out.
There's a famous book called 3 Men in a Boat, Jerome Ke Jerome, in which he gets hold of a medical manual and he finds out that he has every ailment in it except housemaid's knee. That's the only one he doesn't have. That's the problem with self-diagnosis. Yeah.
I think it's the same with any illness, like you one day you may have like a bad stomach or something like that. It may go on for a couple of days. You think, okay, fine, it's food poisoning or something like that. Third day or something, it improves. You go, okay, fine, I just picked up a stomach bug and that's it. But if it persists for like a week or something, then you go, okay, now something's up. I guess it's the same in this case. You see someone who may be down for a day or two, you kind of go, all right, hang in there. But if that's persisting and it's not changing and it seems very off, it's like the same thing. I think you kind of, rather than treating it as something that is other, you just kind of look at it the same way as you look at maybe any other disease, I suppose. And of course, going online and checking WebMD will tell you anything. So
I have another question, which I've been thinking about some time. Is it true that mental ailments have been exacerbated because of more and more people being isolated in their little cocoons of, online presence, right? So, is that a factor? Do you see that affecting, or is that like just it's independent.
Yeah,
It's
maybe.
not-
I mean,
it's,
just the smartphone. I mean, if you were to take that as the symbol of it all, how much of a role is technology
kids
playing
don't
in this
talk
isolation?
to each
and-
other. Yeah. So I went to someone's house and they have 2 children and they spend the entire duration of the time. So the grown-ups were talking to us and the children were in their devices. They had a PlayStation or something and they were playing the entire duration. So parents didn't say a word. They must have said, and then they must have been showdowns and all. So these kids are grown-up kids. They're like in their late teens, 18, 19.
Oh, wow,
and absolutely zero interaction with anyone. So that was obviously not there maybe a generation ago. So would that be contributory to...
Gosh, I don't know if there's a clear-cut answer to that. I really don't know.
So there are no studies or anything?
There are. I'll be honest, I'm not reading them, I guess. I mean, you have to be transparent. You can't catch up with everything in your field of work. But I would just say intuitively, yes. I think the more that we don't connect, because we're social animals. I mean, I hate saying that because it's such a cliche, but we are social animals and we're looking at each other, we're relating to each other and we're getting things, we're feeling connected and we're feeling, all kinds of things with each other. And that's what ends up, helping you make meaning and purpose and, derive that from life. If you're not getting that from people, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if people are receiving... are able to feel connected and related and stuff online.
I was reading
don't know.
about this thing called incels.
Yeah, oh God.
Oh, man.
That looks like...
involuntary celibates.
Yeah, so there's that.
Oh.
So it's basically an entire... so a lot of the mass shootings were in the US that were going on have been done by incels.
Oh, yeah.
So
God,
This one was
yes.
in Canada when it
I
first came
remember
out.
this,
Canada
yes,
one.
yes,
So the
yes.
guy was an incel. The
Yeah.
guy who actually did... one of the mass shootings in
Toronto.
Toronto and also one in the US, he did that. I think the South Korean guy was also identifying as an incel who did Sandy Hook.
Okay.
So anyway, the point being that incels they're involuntary celibates. They have their own group where they are saying that, okay, it's and they have a whole bunch of depraved ideologies, including the fact that they are
Women
being
owe
denied.
them sex.
Women owe them sex.
Attractive women owe them sex.
Yeah.
It's a very deeply delusional, antisocial mindset. The problem is when I say I can hardly imagine where it comes from. The thing is that you empathize. Empathizing does not mean that you are justifying the other person's actions. It does not mean that you are putting aside your beliefs, even though you profoundly disagree with somebody. You empathize to the degree that, okay, fine, these men may not have had some sort of relationship in their lives and all of that, but fueled with the toxic masculinity and whatever else they've decided in this group. Essentially, there's a form of community over here.
Right.
And it's an online community, and that's the thing. This is a group of men with low self-esteem. Let's put it bluntly, right? And they have found like-minded men online, and they've decided to support each other and make it a thing.
And that's how the movement grows, right?
Exactly.
So
make
everyone
it a thing.
talks about it, and some idiot goes and actually does it.
It's basic psychology 101. How do you prove that something is true? The fact of the matter is that we generally do not live in a world of absolute truths. Everything is half-truths. You have a way of seeing something, I have a way of seeing something. But how does anyone prove to themselves that something is true? People are around them. Validate it. That's when you believe that something is the way it is. When you have a president like Donald Trump comes up on stage, comes up to the podium and says, we're clearing the swamp, we're going to get rid of immigrants are stealing our jobs, then all these other, dormant white supremacists come up and say, oh, the guy who's running the country has now validated our thoughts. Now there's this onslaught of fascism in America. In a similar case with people like this who have, their own set of deeply ingrained insecurities and perverse ideologies, you get a whole bunch of them together, they go, oh wait, there's thousands of other people that think the same way as me, therefore it must be true.
No, I think what you brought up is also really cool. In fact, one of the concepts that I was reading on in relation to Trump and this and his supporters was about gaslighting and how how gaslighting originally was like supposed to be this way where it's actually in a relationship, how one partner kind of preys on the other partner's perception of reality altogether and makes them believe things that actually they can perceive through their senses as not real. And I think
that's a very convoluted way of saying that when I say something, my partner tells me I'm crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I read up in fact, I read the etymology of the term gaslighting itself. It was damn interesting, where they said that it came from some novel where a married guy was having an affair, and he used to meet with his lover in their attic, and they used to switch on the gas lights at that point in time. And the woman was like, I can see the gas lights on. And he was like, no, the gas lights are not on. I don't know what you're saying.
That's cool.
So that was the origin of the term gaslighting.
I see.
And but anyway, the point being that it's almost like in this day and age, especially with the media, and kind of relating to the previous question, it's almost like we all have a shared mental disorder where everyone is living in this kind of fugue where nobody knows really, where objective fact is being disputed as fake. And like obvious fakeness, like it's like genuinely living an episode of and the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, where every day you're looking at this naked emperor and still yelling that he's wearing clothes.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite funny, which is where I feel that where I get reinforced with this thing about technology being this like crazy. Whether it's technology or not, I don't know really. It's just this way we are.
I should also say social media. I think it's very important.
Specifically.
Yeah, I think it's very important to know, even though we may cognitively know this, but sometimes it's very difficult to remember that. It's very important not to use social media as a form of consensus, because your news feed is crafted to what is suitable to you.
Yeah.
You know, and in fact, a friend of mine.
Your dopamine hits.
Exactly. In fact, a friend of mine some time ago, I forget the name of this website, otherwise I would have mentioned it, shared this website that stores both forms of news and rhetoric from both
ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, from both. This is America specific. So it was both the Democratic side and the Republican side.
The same incident in...
yes. Yeah. So the thing is that I just to see what my confirmation bias was like, I clicked on the Democrat side. I'm going, I've seen these headlines before. And then some of them, in their own way, if you try to be a little objective, they can be also quite far leftist.
Yeah.
And then you kind of like, okay, that's a bit much. You know, even as someone who identifies as liberal, that's like, okay, fine, I could buy into it, but how much proof is there? And then you go onto the Republican side, it's exactly the same thing, just a polar opposite opinion. And you're going, oh wow, so this is how that's interpreted. Which is why, like, even now when I'm reading news of articles that I strongly agree with, or news periodicals that I consider truthful or objective, I think anyone who's a liberal sort of paints a conservative as a myopic, ruthless, sort of xenophobic kind of person, you know. But I presume there are obviously people who are more conservative that are not those things. There might be valid arguments, but the things that we're not fed those arguments.
Very much so. Anyway, so can you tell me...
went on a tangent.
Oh, no, that's perfectly... We love tangents here at Simblified. So, so can you tell us a bit about your podcast? What are you guys talking about? Where did this start from? Where did you come up with the thought of doing this? And
okay, so it actually started off in 2016. I was doing a sort of self-development course at that time in tandem with my therapy. This was a course that I just did on my own accord. And towards the end of the course, one of the things they told us to do was, all right, guys, you need to pick up a community project of your choice. It can be on any topic. Your goals can be anything you want your goals to be, but you have to do something. Our goal as coaches is just to make sure that you are doing everything in your power to get to where you want to get to with your particular project. And since I, at the time, had only started doing therapy, and I saw what this course was doing for me, what my therapy was doing for me, I'm like, man, mental health, you know, it was like, duh. For me, you know, and so then that was where it sort of started. The course ended ages and ages ago, in at the beginning of 2017 was when it ended. And of course, they'd still check up on you every week to make sure, did you achieve your goals? No. Why not? Okay, like it took a while. But that was the start of it. And things at the end of the day, even though it was a course initially that asked me to do it, it was still an important thing to me. So regardless of what the course was doing, it was still something I wanted to see through. And that's where it started. And then that's when I put up a status on Facebook in November 2016, sort of to quote the introduction video that's on YouTube and on Facebook, I literally say, so I took a leap of faith. I put up a status on Facebook explaining my story and said I wanted to do something about the issue. And that's true. And that's when Avanti wrote in. That's when Avanti reached out. The rest of the Marbles team, Ujala, Shadab, and Nisha, and a bunch of other people as well also reached out. And it just kind of went from there. I had no idea what I was going to do. Like, I didn't know it was a podcast. At that point in time, it was just, I want to do something to raise awareness about mental health. Marbles Lost and Found came in very organically over the next year and a half.
So tell us more about the rest of the team.
Okay, so we all know Avanti over here, yes. The actual brains behind the
Lost Marbles.
The Lost Marbles, yes. She's the mental health professional.
She found them, yeah.
I'm definitely not the actual brain. Okay.
No, I mean, what I mean is that Avanti
you mean the qualified professional?
Yes, I meant she's the qualified professional. Yes, she does. She brings the credibility. Right. But the rest of the team, so it just so happened that at the time I also kind of, wanted people who brought something very specific to the table. And at that time I was thinking Avanti is a mental health care professional.
Yeah, so to cut it short, Ujala is a film producer.
Thank you, Avanti.
Nisha is a film director.
Yes.
Shadab
is a social media manager, a vlogger, a blogger as well. So he's got quite a few things.
And how do they contribute?
So Nisha and Ujala strongly contributed to the introduction video that we put out.
And to content and brainstorming and
actually everything.
Everything. We've done it all as a team.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, of course, when I knew at one point that I wanted to do a video, they were the best people for it, because like Nisha knows how to direct, she knows how to script. Ujala is familiar with that as well because she's also involved with ads and that sort of thing.
And they're personally very curious, interested and impacted by mental health issues too. So that was the common link.
Exactly. And everyone in the team sort of deals with something or the other to some degree.
So what kind of topics are you guys talking about? Where do you start from and where do you go to?
Toxic masculinity
for a start.
Is one.
Fantastic.
We're also doing a couple of episodes on myth busting on certain illnesses like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, dissociative identity disorder.
Which I know you guys did, right? In one of your episodes, I listened to that one.
Yeah, we did. So, in fact, which is where, I've been really interested in like trying to take some of these issues myself, because I was like, with my limited dabbling in psychology, I was always very curious about it, and then afterwards advertising took over, and then the rest.
What a shame! We need more male therapists. You know.
I know.
It's 99.9% are women.
I genuinely don't know a single male therapist. I genuinely don't.
No, but it's weird. Is there any particular reason for that?
Well, think about it. It's seen as a female profession, caring and nurturing and empathizing.
Check out our podcast on toxic masculinity.
I also found a related thing with. So I had I had to get my wisdom teeth removed, and went to the health center nearby, and all the dentists over there, not only were they all women, of course, but also they had that thing where each of them on their name boards had written doctor and in that bracket Mrs. and the name following. Every one of them had doctor and Mrs. And the perception thing, so I was asking, so I later, of course, because I had like 2 large wisdom teeth to be removed, so I kind of started talking to my dentist a bit.
I thought you were going to say 2 large whiskeys.
I think anesthesia qualifies as that. But so when I asked her, and she's like, it's fairly straightforward. Everyone wants a women doctor because they think they are gentler and they will do a better job and they will be neater with their work, rather than a male doctor who will be stronger and tougher and yanking your tooth out. And I'm like, that's just weird.
That is
but you want
weird.
the man to do your heart surgery, but not your dental surgery. So it's... I guess the toxic masculinity episode would cover a lot of this shit.
I think it does cover...
some stereotypes.
Some stereotypes, mostly.
No, but these are all conversations that, funnily enough, we don't really have. Like about everything from... the words that we use, to the concepts that we discuss, to the stuff that we shove under the banner of laughter or don't take offense and stuff like that.
To the fact that woman is a derivative of man.
Exactly, yeah.
Take a very, very recent, very relevant example of toxic masculinity in mainstream media. When Terry Crews was testifying in front of was it Parliament or
the Congress?
The Congress, sorry. And he's talking about his experience about how he was sexually assaulted. And now, from a typical patriarchal perspective, you look at him and go, you are a big, powerful man. What do you mean when you say you get sexually assaulted? And in fact, 50 Cent and Russell Simmons is a record producer, they just kind of mocked him for it. 50 Cent posted a post on Instagram. It was like a montage. It was like a meme montage of Terry Crews. The first picture was a picture of Terry Crews, bare-chested, just looking really buff and stuff, with the caption saying, "I was raped and my wife watched." And below that was another picture of Terry Crews with a rose in his mouth, kind of looking like that, saying "gym time." And his caption was, "What the is going on here?" Basically, like, what do you mean by sexually assaulted? They would have had to take me to jail or something like that. Basically, him implying like I would have kicked his ass or whatever. And I'm just like, and Richard.
No understanding.
Yeah,
of
and the
human beings.
Yeah,
that's just what it is.
Exactly. It's just that's clear, plain sight example of how toxic masculinity is still very much rampant.
Yeah, I mean, and also it also comes down to, I mean, one really interesting. We had some classes in gender studies and stuff like that in college, and one of the classes went very simply saying that when a child is born, it is a child that is male or female or transgendered or intersex. But the child, the baby which is bawling in the cradle becomes a boy or a girl the moment the nurse picks him up and says "ladka hua hai" and puts him in a blue crib. That's when male becomes boy, and we don't usually find the difference between the two.
Right.
And that's where all the masculinity codes start getting reinforced about how much you're supposed to cry, what toys you're supposed to play with, and on and on and on and on. And that those codes are so rampant in society, and they're so coded into our culture and the conversations that we have that they just go.
Exactly.
That they just become this massive mammoth of even influential people becoming so insensitive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, anyway.
We could spend an entire
we definitely could,
and
and we are well out of time. So with our producer frantically gesticulating at us to wrap up here. So yeah, it's been amazing. It's been a great conversation. I've loved this.
Yeah,
and
so have I. And it's awesome. I really recommend. So I've heard 2 of your episodes already. And I recommend it to all our listeners.
Yeah, I haven't. And this reminds me of your Jeeves quote, Naren.
How lucky. So, Stephen Fry wrote, P.G. Woodhouse is an author I'm very inordinately fond of. And people often find it tiresome that I keep dragging the poor chap into all conversations. But here, Stephen Fry introduces a book, a curated collection of Woodhouse's best pieces. And his introduction starts with, "What a lucky man you are for not having read Woodhouse at all, because you get to, read him for the first time." So
that's going to be a great
what a
privilege
lucky
to
man
start. I haven't heard anything yet, so I will be discovering these things
Marbles
by
Lost and
myself.
Found for the first time. And thank you very much for being on the show.
That's such a strong compliment. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys. Please catch Zain and Avanti in their podcast, Marbles Lost and Found. Episodes out every Tuesday. You can find it on the IVM Podcast app or any of your favorite podcasting apps. So, guys, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
Well, we are on Facebook. You can find us just Marbles Lost and Found, just very straight up like that. You can send us an email at write2marbles@gmail.com. The 2 is TO, all lowercase. And yes, that's basically where you can reach us right now.
Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. See you next week with yet another episode of Simblified.
Every week comes a show where 3 people come together to tell you about stuff they like. A movie, a TV show, a book, and other stuff. Tune in every Monday on the IVM Podcast app to IVM Likes. Batman approves this message. Thank you, Batman.
Hey, what's good, you guys? It's your boy Ranveer Alabadia from the YouTube channel Beer Biceps, and the Beer Biceps team is bringing you Hustle Science. Hustle Science is basically a show where we interview hustlers. We ask them about what made them legendary. We ask them about their success secrets. We go to the core of their legendary status in life. It's going to be hosted by my boy Tejaswin Gumber and yours truly, Ranveer Alabadia. Make sure you catch Hustle Science on the IVM Podcasting app and website, or any kind of podcasting platform that you use to get your podcasts. Make sure you check it out. The episodes are going to be out every single Tuesday.